My name is Aaron and I got 11 grade 9s in my GCSEs, and these are my 37 tips for how you can get the grades I did without making the mistakes that I made. This course will be split into 10 sections, with the first couple of sections being about broader topics like study habits and so on, and the rest being on subject-specific tips. This isn't meant to be a clickbait video covering basic stuff like hard work and organize your revision. Instead, what I'm going to tell you is the stuff that I can't just get from a Google search. It's all the little tiny things that really make the difference between your average guy and a grade 9 student. So without further ado, I guess, let's get started. When most guys make a plan, they're doing one of two things. Number one, deciding when they're going to revise, and number two, deciding what they're going to revise. For number one, people usually block out sleep, school, meals, and then try to fill in the gaps with revision. Honestly, this is a complete waste of time. The real reason people do this is because planning feels productive. It makes you feel organized and disciplined, even when you haven't actually revised. What worked for me instead was being intentional with my time. So for instance, I actually tracked my usual week and then adjusted to fit in more revision into my existing schedule. But just remember, hard-working students aren't made by perfect timetables. They're made by the moments when they decide that they're not going to do video games and they're going to revise. Revision never feels smooth or comfortable, so generally the best plan most of the time is to just start revising now. Now for number two, people make these massive timetables where every day is assigned to a subject, or a topic, all the way up until exams. Now this sounds good in theory, but it only works if you're focused every single day and never miss a session, which realistically no one is able to achieve. A big help for me was Ali Abdal's retrospective revision plan. The video will be in the description, by the way. But even that becomes unnecessary closer to exams. Once you're about 3 months out, the best approach is quite simple. Every time you sit down, pretend your real exams are all tomorrow, and then ask yourself, what should I revise? And the answer won't be basic addition or something you find easy. It will be what you find the hardest, and also learning it in a way that is super quick and time efficient and effective. One mistake I made early on was stressing about hours instead of quality. Now, everyone has heard of a cliche like quality over quantity. But what people don't understand is that that means you ensure that the rest of your life outside of studying is conducive to good quality revision. That means eating, sleeping, and exercising well, and also not doom scrolling every night. The phrase work hard, rest hard definitely applies here. A lot of people online talk about the Pomodoro timer, and for those of you who don't know, that's essentially 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of break. I genuinely don't know anyone who used that method and got top grades. And honestly, what are you even meant to do in that 5 minutes you get as break time? Personally, I'd much rather do 4 hours of work on a Sunday morning and the rest of the day. But everyone's different. One recommendation I strongly suggest you do is use a to-do list app. Class charts, Google Classroom, or whatever your school uses isn't enough. For me, once I started using TickTick every day, literally for homework, chores, even things like reminders to ask teachers questions the next day, it just made revision and my life in general so much more efficient. It meant I never actually stressed about forgetting homework and made me literally free up tons of time. One problem a lot of people seem to have is that they see education as something for nerds, or in 9 is this complicated thing they'll never understand. I think the easiest way to fix this is to treat education literally like a sport. So your teachers are your coaches, your exams are your matches, your revision is basically your training. Any footballer, for instance, knows that they need to train, focus on their weaknesses, and analyze past games to improve. So literally just apply this to studying and you're basically sorted. As someone who does athletics competitively, I find this kind of reframing of school in general is really helpful. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Most advice I see online about stress is stuff like stay hydrated or have some you time. Personally, I think that's kind of waffle, as that's never really worked for me or anyone I know. So here are the two things that actually did work. Number one is just be better. The easiest way to make exams less stressful is to have done a mock a week ago and scored 80 or 90%. If your mindset walking into the exams is, yeah, this matters, yeah, I've worked for this, but I think I've got it. Like, you're not gonna panic as much. Number 2, even if you're not fully prepared academically, you can still trick your brain into feeling prepared. So for example, if you turn up early, revise with friends and make sure you've got everything, and walk into exam calmly, that alone makes a massive difference. I mean, the proof is literally that nothing is worse than arriving last minute, rushed and stressed to an exam. One thing I'd add to this whole idea is cramming. So cramming gets a bad reputation, but I think it only is bad if it implies 2 things. 1, you've sacrificed sleep the night before, which I am telling you now is the single worst decision you could make. And 2, it means you haven't prepared properly in advance. Honestly, cramming last minute by just doing quick fire questions with my friends at school right before the exam not only made it sure any gaps were in my knowledge were filled, but also less tense than just standing there waiting basically for the minutes to go by. So I think in that sense it's very helpful. The real reason GCSEs matter is because they're the only exam you actually do in your life where there are no consequences to basic messing up, or at least they're not that bad. Yes, sixth forms I guess do matter, but what's more important is using GCSEs to prove to yourself you can actually get exams right. And so in my opinion, that's at least the biggest reason that you should maximize them as much as possible. So if I told you that getting all 9s means revising about 2 hours, like quality hours, every weekday, and 4 hours on each weekend day, you'll probably react in one of 3 ways. So either, and that's number 1, you say, that's insane, I don't have the discipline for this. Number 2, that's easy, I just don't have the time. Or number 3, I already do way more. If you're number 3, I mean, I guess fair enough, just make sure you're not sacrificing other areas of your life just for grades, because especially GCSEs, they're not worth it. But if you're part of the much larger group of people who either said 1 or 2, the issue really boils down to how you think about discipline. Discipline isn't really about what you do, it's about what you don't do. I mean, if 2 hours feels impossible, it's probably because you're either distracted by social media, gaming, or like, I don't know, doing loads of other stuff like a ton of sports. Remove like those stuff and suddenly you've got loads of time and nothing else to do basically except revise. Just remember, revision is only hard when there's a more dopamine heavy alternative. Okay, so this is non-negotiable. The smartest people I know are all physically healthy and take care of themselves. 8 hours of proper sleep is worth more than 8 hours of revision will ever do. Being healthy literally makes you happier. If you don't believe me, then just search up the runner's high and then you'll find out. But just think about it like this. Ultimately, GCSEs are a stepping stone to a good life. And a good life isn't one where you're miserable or not taking care of yourself properly. So I had parents who didn't let me have a phone, and honestly I think it was a blessing, because social media is literally designed by psychologists to be addictive. I mean, if you want proof, just check your screen time. So if you seriously want 9s, especially close to GCSEs, just do the hard thing. Give your phone to your parents and ask for it back after exams. You'll have plenty of time during the 3-month break. With maths, there's honestly no excuse. Like, it's such an exact subject that it's pretty clear how to get top grades. But as a rule of thumb, almost every mistake is caused by one of 2 things. Either weak understanding or not enough practice. Starting with understanding. Your first response when you are confused is to ask your teachers. That should be your first response. YouTube is helpful, but an actual human who can respond to your questions is way better than some pre-recorded videos. That being said, ChatGPT is also great. You can literally ask anything you're confused about and it will give you a proper personalized response. Just remember, don't fall into the trap of switching off in class because you think like, oh, I'll just go over this properly at home anyway, I don't have to focus in class. So the biggest mistake people make is starting revision with the easy stuff, like, I don't know, surds or prime factorization, because it feels organized and productive. That only really works if you've got unlimited time. As someone who doesn't, I would recommend you start with your weakest topics first, then move onto what you're already like decent at, I guess. Like revision isn't meant to feel comfortable. So if your brain hurts a bit afterwards, that's not actually a bad sign. This idea that revision has to look pretty is honestly completely nonsense. You go into the exam with 0 notes anyway, and everyone like throws away literally all their notes after the exams are over. So don't waste your time worrying about like, oh, is this pretty? I mean, go as far as doing questions on the bus or scribbling stuff on random paper just to jog your memory. As long as the information is organized and pretty in your head, then it genuinely doesn't matter. So in terms of notes, write them once and make sure they cover everything in the specification, and then never write them again. Then you can just use them for reference. If you don't know what the specification is, it's basically just the exam board's list of everything you need to know. Funny thing, I guess, is that on average they're only about 70 pages long, I mean maybe even less, yet then your teachers give you some massive textbook that's like, I don't know, 500 pages long and say to get a grade 9 you have to memorize it all, when in reality, yeah, that's just not true. But anyway, back to the point, don't waste your time rewriting notes over and over again. Just create them once and use them as reference. As a rule of thumb, your notes should just be the specification with all the student should learn bits replaced by the actual what students should know. The single best way to practice exam technique is to split your computer screen or tablet screen and put the past paper on one side and the mark scheme on the other. Then you answer a question, for instance, let's say question 1 part B, and then immediately check the marks. Doing this over and over basically lets you memorize the mark scheme and improves your exam technique like a lot. This is probably like the #1 biggest hack possible for subjects where exam technique is like the make or break. So this is like sciences or geography. If you really want to be efficient, start saying your answers out loud rather than writing them down, as writing can take a while. Then do the same thing and check against the mark scheme. I did this, and I know it requires a lot of concentration, but you can literally save hours using this method and get through like tons of past papers in maybe even just a couple days. So this is going to be a long section, as I think essay writing is arguably what students find the hardest, the #1 reason being that they're subjective. So what counts as a grade 9 essay can genuinely change from teacher to teacher. I struggled with this concept at first because I thought, oh, if I just did exactly what the teacher said, I'd automatically get a 9. But that didn't always happen, and I never really got a clear reason why. Eventually, I realized the only real way to get a grade 9 is literally to wow the examiner. So I guess the next couple of tips will be about how you can do this without, I guess, falling into the traps that I fell into. So starting with English literature, the exam basically tests 3 things, but make sure to double check the specification to make sure. So #1 is analysing quotes, #2 is critical thinking, and #3 is overall interpretation. So when you make notes, make sure you're covering all these 3 things. Personally, I used YouTubers like Mr. Sellers and Mr. Bruh, and they were absolute gold for knowing what you need to do for each question. As for English lit and language, that's really important, so definitely check them out. For analysing quotes, keep it simple. Look up A-level or high-level literary techniques and start using them. Every quote you then learn have to have some wow factor attached to it. But just remember that an examiner only marks your interpretation of a technique, not the technique itself. So if you find an A-level technique and don't know what it does, then it's honestly completely worthless. Also, make sure you've got 2 or 3 different techniques, including at least 1 language device and 1 structural device. What I personally did was list every single theme in each text and made 3 quotes for each one. Then I showed it to my teacher, who then helped me improve the weaker sections. And then if you're really smart, you'll be able to find quotes that match multiple themes. So for example, in total I only memorized about 20 quotes for about 10 themes. Just another thing as well is that you may get people online giving you the, oh, only 10 quotes you ever need, or other stuff like that. To be honest, that's just clickbait, so don't waste your time trying to memorize 10 quotes and thinking that will be enough. Now, this critical thinking, I think, is the part that most students find the hardest, as it is really something that's hard to measure. but like you can tell. The best way I found of dealing with this was by trying to think like the entire exam was just a debate. So you're weighing up what the writer, like, I guess, was trying to say and why, and maybe why they weren't trying to say that. One big mistake is using rigid Peel paragraphs. So they can sort of guarantee you a 6, but not anything above that. Try to go in the exam pretending like you're a university professor. Therefore, you'd write like one using high-level vocabulary and commenting on the nuance on text or something like that. But ultimately, practice makes perfect. So just do a bunch of past paper questions and then see how you do. For overall interpretations, each essay should usually have about 3 chunky paragraphs plus an intro for 20 marks, and then for 4 chunky paragraphs with an intro and conclusion for 40 marks. Your intro needs to sum up your overall interpretation, and your paragraph should kind of flow together. Usually this is in chronological order, but ensuring that they make logical sense. To really master this, I think you need to stop thinking quote first and start thinking point first. So for example, in Inspector Calls, Mr. Burling says unsinkable because Priestley is exposing the upper class's capitalist naivety, not the other way around. The easiest way to do this is, as I said before, create a bank of quotes for each theme beforehand and ensure that, I guess, for that theme, you've got a cohesive set of quotes with cohesive points. So if you do this all correctly, then you shouldn't have to spend the first 5 minutes of the exam writing a plan, which in such a time-pressured exam can really make the difference between a 9 and not a 9. So I'll be honest, I did use ChatGPT to brainstorm interpretations for quotes, but just remember that nothing it says is 100% reliable. So I'll give you an example. I remember that there was a poem that exists in both AQA and Edexcel anthologies for conflict with the same title, and for the life of me I couldn't get ChatGPT to talk about the Edexcel one, which was the exam board I used. So I guess use it if you want, but treat it imagine brainstorming with a grade 4 student who's somehow memorized the entire text. So in regards to these AI essay marking tools, I think you may be falling into the trap of having AI be the one thinking and not you. To be honest, if you have a half decent teacher who is willing to spend 5 minutes after school marking your work, use them. Besides, in my experience, the subtleties of how exams are marked, especially for these essay subjects, like how paragraphs are structured, etc. This hasn't been picked up by ChatGPT or Graph or Gemini, or whatever other AI there is out there. So for English language, the quote analysis is the same as literature, but exam technique and memorizing literary devices is everything. So there are loads of good YouTube channels for this, including good old Mr. Ruff and Mr. Salles, which were my go-to for English language as well as English lit. One of the things guys struggle on a lot is how on earth can you find all these literary devices in such a short space of time. So once you have analysed 20 extracts, you can practically find interesting stuff in the most boring sentences. Also, bear in mind that once again, you only get marks for how you interpreted technique, not the technique itself. So as long as you basically waffle, even just a boring simile can get you top marks. For religious studies, I did EduCAS, which for those who don't know is basically the most writing any human can do in a GCSE exam. There were 3 papers, one of them being 2 hours long and 126 marks. The reason I was able to get a 9 was that I realised pretty quickly that the main thing I had to fix was my writing speed. Previously, I used large ink pens and wrote in a kind of chalkboard font style, which was very neat and organised, but painfully slow. What made the biggest difference though was when I switched to the lightest ink pen I could find, with the thinnest tip, and started writing joined up. My grades practically changed overnight across all the essay subjects because of this. With essay subjects, time pressure plus the fact that quantity matters just as much as quality means stress can absolutely destroy your grade. Forget a couple of quotes on the day, and a grade 9 student can end up with literally a 5 or 6. To avoid this, do loads of handwritten practice papers under timed conditions and give them to your teacher. Another thing is that when you get feedback, don't just accept it was okay, or even it was great. Ask why you lost marks, because sometimes teachers don't tell you the full story unless you push for them to tell you everything. So I was one of those people who struggled with Spanish, so this tip is for anyone who wants a good grade without fully learning the language. So step 1 is to ace vocab, as this is basically your bread and butter. Learning loads of new vocabulary can really feel overwhelming, but you'll naturally pick up some familiarity just by paying attention in class. After that, go to the specification and scroll right the way down until the very end, where you'll find a vocabulary list. Then memorize the common verbs and common adjectives sections using flashcards or sheets of paper. This is basically just the 80-20 rule. Learning 20% of the vocab gets you 80% of the marks. This literally took my grade from a 4 to a 9 in the reading exam in about a month of practice. Practice doing everything I've said so far should get you a 9 in reading, and with a few high-level phrases memorized and all 9 yes or 9 tenses memorized, also the way. Listening is basically just reading, but with someone talking at you. The best way to prepare is just practice past papers. That's what keeps you calm under pressure. So once you've done all the papers for your exam board, move on to the other boards, as they are basically the same thing. What you'll find is that each question from question 1 through to question 10 in your speaking exam will follow a set repeated structure. For instance, question 9 is usually the hardest and requires you to actually write stuff down rather than multiple choice. So familiarity almost matters more than actually being good at Spanish. For speaking, pick your strongest theme, for instance mine was holidays, and absolutely rinse it. Add as many tenses and high-level phrases you can without sounding forced in your 1-minute speech. I managed to fit in all 9 tenses into the 1-minute speech. This is because this is your only opportunity to use those grade 9 tenses, and be sure you will use them without making grammatical errors. For the questions, they'll mainly come from that same theme, so practice until you can talk for about 20 seconds or so per question. Then, when they switch themes and give you questions on a different topic, you can basically improv your way to a decent grade using simple, but as long as they're grammatically correct, sentences. For subjects like geography and psychology, and honestly humanities in general, there's so much content, and the only way you don't drown in all the waffle is by constantly checking the specification. Your specification literally tells you exactly what you need to know, so grab it and start condensing everything in those textbooks down from there. Flashcards definitely have pros and cons. The main upside is that they force active revision, so you actually have to think, and they're good for spaced repetition, especially if you're using something like Anki, but the problem is they're only helpful up to a point. The biggest problem being is that they just take ages to make, and they don't match the mark scheme. So they're great for memorizing content, but not amazing for practicing exam technique. I personally never really used them, purely because they took too long to make, but I know plenty of people who did amazing in their GCSEs and swore by them. Mind maps, especially on A3 paper, are really underrated. They force you to be concise, and they help you remember things because your brain naturally likes organizing information into sections. It's a really good way to condense loads of content, but also allows you to see the bigger picture, which I think you can lose when you're learning lesson by lesson. And this can really help you solidify information into your memory. Now, on a side note, I just want to spend the next 33 seconds to talk to you about Waffle. Waffle is basically every single problem I have seen with students note-taking solved in one place. It basically forces you to write notes in a concise, organised way, cutting the waffle and ensuring you write to the specification. Plus, it comes with flashcards that are all generated instantly from your notes. It literally costs less than £20 a year, and using the promo code in the description you can get premium for free for the first month. Hope you enjoy. Anyway, back to the video. Coursework is basically the whole subject for DT. It's the #1 test of your discipline, especially when in DT a grade 9 boundary can literally be as high as 90%. There isn't much more to it other than consistent hard work. A tip I would recommend is firstly be consistent. Playing games on the computers for the first couple of months won't help you, especially, and this is really important, as your teachers are more likely to give you preferential treatment, like marking your coursework regularly to check if you've done everything up to scratch, if you're already far ahead and therefore the first one to ask them this. One final tip is your choice of product is really important. Make sure it's not too hard. But if you're done early, you can always add more to it. So like there's a base product, but then you can add more. Loads of people complain about how much content there is in DT theory, but from my experience, about 90% of the paper is just common sense. Then another 5% comes from actually listening in class and skimming through the textbook. And the final 5%, the stuff you actually genuinely have to memorize, is literally just 2 designers, 2 companies, and your chosen material. As long as you can write a lot of waffle and have done a couple past papers, that's basically all you need for grade 9. First thing, don't blindly trust textbooks. Always prioritize the specification. Textbooks are fine if you are cross-checking everything with what the exam board actually wants, which again is found in the specification. Now if you're taking a subject with not many decent online resources, like for me it was GCSE psychology, I use the exam board approved textbook. It'll have like the sticker on it. This means that basically anything in there will be directly what's on the mark scheme, so if you write anything that was found in that book in your paper, they can't blame you. There's no magic website I'd recommend for resources. To be honest, like same with textbooks, I think loads of them overcomplicate stuff, or waffle simply to make it look more like they know what they're doing. So they might add diagrams or fancy descriptions. I know about 20 people who got 8 or more grade 9s, and barely any of them relied on these big study sites. Most of it was just a mixture of rock solid notes and just practicing exam past paper questions. Mocks are huge. Like honestly, mock exams teach you more than weeks of lessons. If you did badly on a paper, revise properly and then redo it in order to try and get 100%. Just writing a list of things to improve or vaguely revisiting the things you did bad at doesn't really change anything. You need to actively fix your mistakes and then move on. GCSEs test your weaknesses, not your strengths, so stop spending loads of time on topics you're already good at just because it feels nice. Focus on where you actually lose marks instead. Try to start revising around the end of year 10 if you can. Obviously, if you are in year 11 already, then don't stress as though there's still time. But I think a lot of people underestimate how bad exam stress is, and trust me, revising whilst under pressure is not nice. And finally, like on a more retrospective note, I guess, this is more advice I would give to my younger self. Please don't make GCSEs your whole identity. Looking back, they feel massive at the time, but a couple of months into A-levels and they become basically irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. The problem with making GCSEs your whole identity is that you then get fueled by fear, and fear of not being good enough, which means your entire self-esteem is based on your last grade. Even though GCSEs are important to an extent, I'll reiterate that the whole point of GCSEs is to lead a good life, and if you kill yourself for just a couple 9s, you should reconsider your life. So hopefully that should at least help you understand what you need to do to get good grades, if nothing else. Feel free to like, subscribe, and drop a comment asking me any questions, if there is anything you want clarification on or something I've missed, and I'll try to do my best to answer it. If there are enough questions, then I may even make another video answering them.